Hello, everybody. This is Brett Lonsdale from Lightning Tools, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. We're going to be talking about DeliverPoint this week. So this is the permissions management tool for SharePoint Online that we'll be focused on, and DeliverPoint is also available for SharePoint on premises as well. But the purpose of today's event is to have a look at the SharePoint Online features and also some of the new features that we've been releasing throughout this month. So yeah, welcome to the call, everybody. I'm just going to spend a short period of time introducing Lightning Tools to anybody that's new to us, and we'll then jump into the webinar. And most of the content that you're going to see today is going to be a live demonstration of DeliverPoint inside of modern SharePoint Online. So yeah, first of all, Lightning Tools, we're a company that is in our 15th year of providing different tools and web parts that basically help people be more efficient when they're using Microsoft SharePoint, SharePoint Online, Teams, and yeah, also other areas of Microsoft 365 as well. We also have a sister company known as Enlightening, and Enlightening helps businesses to basically achieve goals when looking to use the Power Platform and also Microsoft SharePoint and Teams as well. Not through training or consultancy, but basically coaching, so we can make sure that you achieve your goals with the most efficient type of learning possible. And from the Lightning Tools perspective, we've got a portfolio of different products. Obviously, the permissions management tool is going to be the one that we're focused on today. And we also have a few other products as well in our suite, which include things like content aggregation, discussion boards. We also have some data visualization and integration tools as well. And finally, also our list form design tool, Lightning Forms, which can be used to customize the out-of-the-box SharePoint list forms within inside of SharePoint Online or SharePoint on premises. So obviously you can reach out to our website, lightningtools.com, and take a look at those products as well. There's some videos and also some of the webinars coming up too that you may want to register for. So to get going with today's material, first of all, we're just going to take a look at, why is a permissions management tool needed for SharePoint Online? And I think if you're on this webinar, then you probably already know, but we're just going to go and take a look at some of the different challenges that people face when they're using SharePoint, either as a SharePoint administrator or also as an end user, such as a content owner, such as a site owner or a site collection administrator. So some of the challenges that those people have in reporting and also managing permissions as sort of daily changes occur with inside your department or your project, and also in your organization. We're also going to take a look at DeliverPoint, of course, and we're going to have a look at how DeliverPoint will simplify some of that permissions management and permissions reporting. And it does that from both points of view, from, again, a sort of centralized reporting and management that you would be doing as maybe a SharePoint administrator or a tenant administrator, but we'll also be taking a look at DeliverPoint from the perspective of a site owner or a site collection administrator as well, and reporting and managing permissions at smaller scopes, but perhaps within sites or multiple sites, or even a site collection. And once we've covered those features, we're going to also jump into the new features of 3.4, which we've released just this month. So that includes some exciting new features, such as the ability to create site templates. We've got some enterprise features as well that we're going to be talking about, so scheduled reporting and things like that, which won't be in the standard version, but I'll explain why as we go through. So first of all, why is a SharePoint permissions management tool needed for Microsoft SharePoint? Well, if you've used the out-of-the-box tools to report and manage permissions, you're probably frustrated that there's just way too many items, too many folders and subfolders and so on, or sites, lists and libraries that exist throughout your organization. And it's almost impossible to go through and report and manage the permissions on each of those effectively, because you have to do it one object at a time. And that includes, being able to report at a site level. It's just one site at a time, and that site permissions report also isn't very granular. It doesn't include perhaps direct permissions in that side panel report. It doesn't include Active Directory security group enumeration, so we don't know who may have been granted permissions through an AD security group. And therefore, we have to do a lot of digging to go in and out of all the SharePoint groups, the Microsoft 365 groups, the AD security groups, and so on, in order to be able to build this picture as to who has permissions to our content. But when we're also just trying to manage a folder or even an entire document library, there can just be so many items. You may have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of items, and you don't even know which ones have unique permissions or inherited permissions, let alone who's got permissions to that content or what sharing links exist. So in order to be able to sort of report and manage that, it's more than a full-time job. And by the time you have perhaps recorded who's got permissions and verified the right people have permissions to your content, it may have actually changed. So by the time you get to document 10,000, for example, document 1 may have been shared with somebody externally inside your document library without you even knowing. So let's just jump in and take a look at some of that before we see how DeliverPoint can help. So I'm just going to bring up my SharePoint environment here. And I'm actually logged in here as the tenant administrator, but I'm also going to log in as an end user as well in just a moment. So when I go into my team, I'm just going to jump into the sales hub here. So we've got the regular sort of things that you might see inside a document library inside this site. So there's some commission sheets, there's some general folders that belong to teams because it's a teamified site. We've also got some sales brochures, sales strategy, and so on. And as we go through into some of these folders, notice we've got nested folders, and we can dig in deeper again, and we might find some files and so on. And one of the challenges within a document library is notice that if I hit the drop down on the document library, I get these sharing features. So I can share the folder, or I can manage the access on that folder. As soon as I select more than one folder, those options disappear. So actually being able to see out of all of these folders and these files, which ones have unique permissions, I can't do that. I have to literally go through one at a time, which is going to be time consuming enough just on the number of items that I have in this library, which is not realistic to how many you would have in real life. So there's a challenge just there. The other challenge is if I just jump in as a different user here. So this user is a user with edit permissions only. And as I go into the document library, you'll notice that by default, a user with edit permissions can still share. So this user could go through and share a file or a folder. So we could share the general folder. We could share the sales strategy and things like that. So as I click share, sorry, misclick. So as I click share, I'm just going to go through and share with an external user, which is my Gmail account. So let's just put in brett.lonsdale@gmail.com, and you can email me there if you like. Sorry, I beg your pardon. That one's I'm not allowing external access. Let me try one more. In fact, what I could do is just change this down to specific people. That would do it. Okay, so brett.lonsdale@gmail.com. So this is just full of spam, this email address. So I'm going to go through and share with that. We could send the email. I could also copy the link and so on, and that will share that folder, even though I don't have full control to this site. You'll notice here I can't, if I jump into the site settings, I don't see the regular options here for managing permissions on this site because I am just an editor. Okay, so that's one of the challenges there, is just sort of keeping on top of the sharing that goes on, the broken permission inheritance, and being able to sort of report on that content in volume. So back here as a SharePoint admin or tenant admin, you'll notice that as I click onto the cog icon inside the site as well, I can come down to the site permissions. And this is what it shows me by default. We can see who the site owners and the site members and the site visitors are. But again, it's not too granular. I'm only seeing 4 or 5 entries in here. I can see that there's some users with limited access because that's the Gmail account that's just actually occurred. I can't see who's inside this sales Active Directory security group. Even clicking that is just not going to tell me. And also there's other users with direct permissions that aren't showing inside of here. So if I was to jump into the advanced permissions page, which is that classic looking page, you will see the direct permissions show up there. But also again, I have to drill in to some of these different SharePoint groups to be able to see who the members of the groups are, and it's not going to show me again who's inside these AD security groups, etc. So it's really hard to build up a picture as to who's got permissions to your content as a site owner or even as a SharePoint admin. So these are some of the challenges that people face, and it literally is like trying to cut the grass with a pair of nail scissors. It's just going to be way too time consuming that, you know, why actually bother, and we end up just letting a mess start to occur. So bring on DeliverPoint, and what DeliverPoint can do is help us to report and manage permissions at scale. So this could be, again, as a site owner or as a site collection administrator, you can report across your entire site or multiple sites, even multiple site collections if you want to. We can bring up sharing link reports across multiple sites again, just to be able to see, you know, what in different lists and libraries has been shared and by whom and when was it shared, etc. And you can also go through and reset all of that sharing as well. So just being able to report and manage on multiple objects at any one time, and that includes multiple sites and site collections and lists and libraries and items, that can save you a tremendous amount of time and help you to be basically more efficient because you're spending less time trying to keep your permissions in check. So let's have a look at how DeliverPoint can do all of this. So what we're going to do is just jump back into that SharePoint site. What you'll notice in the top right hand corner is a little opaque icon, and it's discrete for a reason. It's just holding a few different shortcuts to some of the different reports that you have in the site. There's full-blown DeliverPoint as you click onto the DeliverPoint menu, and in there you're going to see all of the reports available to you and lots of different actions. But some of the more common reports that you may want to run at the site level are just available within a single click. So we can easily bring up the Discover Permissions report for this site. And rather than having to do lots of guesswork on who may have been permissioned against this site, we see everybody. We can see people that have been permissioned implicitly because they are a site collection admin. We see people that are permissioned explicitly, meaning that they have actually been granted permissions to the site. And then we've also got users that show up because of an AD security group member. And that includes the everyone but external users group. So you can see in here, I've got quite a lot of users with read permissions. This is actually quite a common thing. People think that their sites are locked down and realize that they've inherited the everyone group from somewhere. So everybody can actually read the site. So in here, we can see, yeah, everybody in the organization can basically read this site as being a member of that everyone group. And as I scroll down further, we can start to see users with edit permissions, some with limited access, some with full control, and so on. So it's basically giving us everybody that is permissioned. And again, this is a demo environment, so it's a fairly small report. And for that reason, you can filter it. So we can look at it in chunks. If we want to look at everybody that has edit permissions, let's say, which is quite a common requirement, we can produce that report by using the filter and see all of those users that have edit permissions. And the next thing we can do is actually try to work out, well, how did these users actually get the edit permissions in the first place? So on this right-hand column, we can actually drill into the groups and see which of these are perhaps members of Microsoft 365 or Office 365 groups, which ones are in Active Directory security groups like the sales group here, which have actually been nested into some of the SharePoint groups, and that's how they've come about getting these permissions. And you can also see that direct permissions, like the one at the bottom here, where demo user 6 has just been directly granted design and edit permissions without actually even going into a group. So we've got that type of filtering that we can do. That filtering can be, you know, a little bit more advanced as well. So you can go in and you can add multiple conditions and things like that. You can branch them if you want to as well. So you can get exactly what you need from this report. You can also see all of the users, and each entry has the people card and avatar associated with it as well, which is also important because what you'll see inside this report, hopefully as we scroll down, yeah, there's two Brett Lonsdales. So there's a Brett Lonsdale which has this image, which was actually taken a few years ago. I should update that. And I've also got this one here, which just has my initials. And of those two users, you can see how without the avatar, they could be easily confused. But one, if I expand the people card, is that Gmail account, and it's an external user. The other one is my internal account. So you can see here my my Lightning Tools account here. You can see my direct reports, and if you needed to get in touch with me, you can directly through the people card. So that's the sort of thing that we can produce in here. And if we want to filter on the user as well, we can. So this is a great way of actually seeing all of the Brett Lonsdales together. We can see which ones of those have just read permissions or edit permissions or limited access and things like that, which is great. Okay, so that's just reporting at the site level. But what I'm going to do here is just jump into the main DeliverPoint page, and I'm going to run the same report, but an advanced version of the Discover permissions, because you're probably wondering, what about all those lists and libraries and folders and items that I was just talking about? So we don't necessarily need to have a report that shows us everybody's permissions to everything inside the site. We can do that if you want to, but under the settings here, what I can tell DeliverPoint to do is just focus on those items that may have unique permissions, where the permission inheritance has been broken. And don't forget, this is like cutting that grass with a pair of nail scissors. In order to be able to just find out which folders and which documents have unique permissions, that's going to take you a considerable amount of time without DeliverPoint. But with DeliverPoint, I can basically select these options. So focus on those items with unique permissions. I can include the ones with inheritance if I want to, but it'd be a waste of time. I could also pre-filter it. So for example, I already know that everybody has read access. I don't need to see that in my report. So at the top here, I can say permission level is not equal to read, or we could have the everyone group just excluded directly or something like that. So I'm basically going to get back everybody with contribute, edit, design, full control, etc. So when I hit generate now, it's going to churn through that site, but it's also going to include subsites as well in this case. And I've got two subsites in this one. One is called partners, the other one is called regions, but partners inherits permissions, so it's not included inside this report. So we just get to see the regions subsite. And as we scroll down a bit further, we can see the document library has unique permissions. And further still, we get to see folders and files that also have unique permissions. So you can see the folder structure here, and each of these are hyperlinks. If I want to navigate to that folder to check out what that content actually is, I can, or I can directly open up the document from here as well. So that's a full report of everything from this site down that contains unique permissions. And this might be something that you want to export. So we can export that out as an Excel document, and we'll be looking at more of that shortly. But once it's inside an Excel document, we've got a snapshot, and that snapshot could perhaps be given to a site collection admin to say, go through and work out what in here is accurate and what isn't. So that's the advanced Discover permissions. And also when you're inside the site, we can jump into a SharePoint list or a SharePoint library. And in here, we can go through and select multiple files or folders at any one time. And even though I've lost by doing that, the manage access or the sharing links options, you still have DeliverPoint showing up at the bottom here. So we can go through and discover permissions, even though we're selecting everything inside that document library. And again, on the left-hand side, you're going to see the file. And you'll notice that sometimes that file is kind of dimmed. It's got a faint file name versus this general one that is in full color. And anything that is showing up as dimmed inherits permissions, and anything in full color has unique permissions. So now we can actually see, where we can actually make changes, and we can start to make changes if we want to as well. So if perhaps I see somebody with unique permissions granted to one of these general folders, we'll pick on demo user 6, for example, here, I can basically select that row. And from the actions menu here, we can go through and make some changes. So we'll cover more of these changes shortly, but one thing that I might want to do is just straightforward delete those permissions. So it's picked up the user, it's picked up the scope, being that folder, and we can go through and actually tell it to delete those permissions from that user. So that has now taken place, and the permissions have been removed from the general folder. Okay, so you can very easily sort of clean up your permissions and work out what should be in place and what shouldn't. The other thing is sharing links. So as you saw, I shared a file or a folder with somebody externally, and we did that as demo user 5. So one thing that I can do, rather than literally going through and choosing manage access one at a time and trying to work out who has a sharing link, we can actually just run that straight from here. And that sharing links report will include any file or any folder inside this site, even across multiple lists and libraries where a sharing link exists. And we can see who created the sharing link. So there's demo user 5 that created some. This is the one that we did just a moment ago at the bottom here. So we can see demo user 5, even though they only had edit permissions, they shared at this date and time this link with Brett Lonsdale, an external user, and gave him contribute permissions. And we've also got anybody with the link at this one. So that was shared. So anybody that gets their hands on that link will be able to access that document. So these things we may decide as the site owner that I don't want these sharing links to exist. So I can go through and select them. I can do a select all if I want to as well, but I'm just going to select those two and hit remove sharing links, and DeliverPoint will go through and remove those sharing links so that they're no longer being shared. And it might be an educational point of time as well for me as a site owner to contact demo user 5 and say, hey, will you stop sharing links in that way? Here's a better way to grant permissions than doing that. All right, so that's kind of DeliverPoint from an end user perspective. Let's jump into the main DeliverPoint page here. So when we're in here, notice that the scope is still set to this one single site. So when I produce any of the reports, the sharing links report, the discover permissions, it's all looking at this site here. But what I can also do is show a tree view, and that allows me to access any other site or site collection that I have the ability to manage permissions on. So we can drill into each of these different site collections and choose different things that we may want to report on. And I'll show you a little bit more of that in a moment. But from this main DeliverPoint page and the report menu, another useful report is the unique objects. And this is actually just a report that I can tell it to show me everything that has broken permission inheritance in my site or as a subsite. So in here, we've got a couple of sites, we've got a list, and we've got some items that all have broken permission inheritance. And this is a fantastic starting point to be able to produce the permission report that could otherwise appear to be overwhelming. So what we can do is have a look at these objects. If there's anything that stands out as something that we're concerned about, so commission sheets, why has that been shared? Or why has it got unique permissions? So I can basically select that. And from the reports menu, we can now discover permissions on it. So that will become the scope for my report. We can check out who's got permissions on this and work out whether that should be the case or not. The other report in here includes unique permissions. We can run that from here, but there's also a better way of running it, which I'll show you. So we're going to open up the tree view, and with the tree view open, one of the things you'll see here is that we can expand and collapse each of the different site collections or hub sites or teams, or even Microsoft 365 groups as well. And from that, we've got that similar sort of pattern going on. So anything that has the full color icon, we know has unique permissions. Anything with a dimmed icon, again, we know that inherits permissions. So just being able to tell what has unique permissions and inherited permissions saves you a tremendous amount of time, because otherwise you, again, having to go through and visit that report object by object, whereas we've got that information right here. And again, in real life, not just a demo environment, these reports, when you run a discover permissions report against 2 or more sites, you may be overwhelmed with thousands of users that have access to those sites. So one of the things that DeliverPoint also offers is the ability to just simply compare permissions. So we've spotted something has unique permissions. Why is the question to that. So this will tell us why, or hopefully actually tell us the differences, and maybe we can determine why. So in here, we can actually tell what the differences are. So demo user 6, we can see actually has full control to the regions site, but only has design and edit to the Lightning Tools sales site. That's a difference. We can also see that somebody has limited access to the sales site as well. And of course, the 3 specific groups for the region site exist, giving full control, edit and read. So they are the differences, and we can also mix and match different types of objects. So we can include all 3 sites here in this site collection, as well as a document library, and compare permissions on those too. So we can keep on adding to this report to be able to see that matrix, and again, who's got permissions to each of these objects. So the compare permissions is a really useful report that you can access by selecting different objects here on the tree view. Now the tree view, as I mentioned, has a big mixture of different types of symbols. You can see this is a teamified site at the top here. We can see some classic site collections, some Microsoft 365 groups, and so on. But what you can do is actually focus in on just those types of objects. So we can bring back all of my teams in here. There's a great team called technical support, and if I look up that one, you'll see that it has a private channel in it. So we can go through and perhaps compare the private channel. Sorry, I'm not selecting the right thing there. There we go. Oh, I'm still not. Anyway, we can pull up a permission report that's showing me. Sorry, there we go. So we can pull up the permission report on the private channel as well as the actual team, and see who's got permissions to each of those, which is a useful thing to do. We've also got hub sites. Now, if you're using hub sites, you'll know that granting permissions can be a challenge with hub sites because every associated site has its own permissions. So in here, we've got each of the different associated sites and the hub site itself. And if I want to grant maybe a new user permissions to each of these sites, we'd have to go and visit each site independently. Whereas with DeliverPoint, I can basically go through and select those. From the actions menu, we can go to copy, transfer, delete, grant, or revoke permission. So I'm going to do a grant permission in here, and we can go through and grant permissions explicitly to a user or put a user inside a group. So I'm just going to go through and give this user edit permissions, and we'll execute that. And it's gone and granted permissions to each of those different objects that have unique permissions within inside that scope of those associated sites. So it's a great way to sort of onboard somebody and get them permissioned very, very quickly. Okay, another type of view that we've got is the accounts view as well. And from that accounts view, we can do a search on any user. So if we've got a user that may be changing roles inside our organization or looking to exit the organization, what we can do is just simply go through and select that account. And from the reports menu, we can produce a unique permissions report. And this doesn't include everything that the user has permissions to, but it includes everything that the user's been granted permissions to. So of course, it's not including things that inherit permissions, but just those places where they're uniquely assigned. So in here, we've got quite a bit of information. We've got the account membership. So this is showing me all the groups that demo user 10 happens to be a member of. We can also see any unique site permissions and any list permissions, and also any item permissions that have been granted to this user. So we can go through and clean those up. Again, we can select these, and that becomes the scope for things like the delete permissions, or yeah, it may be that we just want to blanket delete some of these, or copy these permissions to somebody else, or something like that. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So if we just jump back to the tenant view here again and select the sales site, I'm just going to do the standard permission report, the discover permissions, and we're going to filter this to show demo user 10. Demo user 4 first. So demo user 4, you'll notice the maximum permissions they have is edit permissions on the region site. Demo user 10, if we were to change to that user, you'll see that demo user 10 has full control directly. So one of the things that I'm going to do with this set as the scope is jump into my actions, go down to account management, and I'm going to transfer those permissions as though demo user 10 is no longer working on this project, no longer working in this department or something. So I'm going to choose the transfer permissions, and we're going to transfer permissions away from demo user 10, and we're going to give those permissions to demo user 4, who maybe taking over that role, either permanently or temporarily. And notice that we've got some options in here as well, so we can process subsites if we want to, lists and items as well. And it will only process those lists, items, and subsites that have unique permissions. Otherwise, we'd need to force break permissions, which we don't always want to do. We can support a rollback as well, which means we can undo this operation if we want to. And we can optionally modify SharePoint group membership and Microsoft 365 group membership. So once I'm ready, I can just hit run, and that will go through and transfer whatever permissions demo user 10 has away from that user and give them to demo user 4. Okay, so we can see that that's taken place. And if we were to discover permissions again, we'll filter on demo user 10. And notice that the only permissions demo user 10 has is read, and that's because I can't actually make them not be part of the everyone group. So they've got read permissions. I also wouldn't have affected any other Active Directory security group either. Whereas if we go through and clear that filter and take a look at demo user 4, you can see that they've got the full control that demo user 10 did have, as well as any other permissions that they already had. Okay, so that's the type of operation that we can perform that will save you a tremendous amount of time when people come and go inside your department or your organization. It also helps us with onboarding users as well. So if we had somebody that was going to start and work alongside demo user 10, we could make sure that they have the same permissions, or even create template accounts for each of your different departments. So you could actually create a person called salesperson, and every time you want to onboard a new salesperson, you just copy permissions from salesperson, and everything will be copied to that account. There is also the ability to revoke permissions, and revoking permissions is a great way of just taking away a permission level. So I may have some users that have full control accidentally granted to them or something like that, whereas they should have edit. So I don't want to take away all of the permissions from them. I just want to take away any full control permissions that may have been granted to them, and that's something I can do with the revoke option. Okay, so that's yeah, a lot of the different operations that you can perform, some of the reports. I'll also just show you that from the account-centric report as well, we can also get into, once we've selected a user, we can get into their OneDrive permissions as well. So when somebody does leave the organization, it's not just SharePoint that we have to worry about, it's also their OneDrive and what have they shared from their OneDrive with people, what direct permissions have they given to their content. That may actually be required by other people that work in their department with them. So we could go through and maybe look at moving that content or maintaining those sharing links and so on after that user has left. Okay, so that's the type of thing that we can do in here. Going to the jobs log, this is all of the jobs that we've performed using DeliverPoint. So you can see that transfer permissions that I did, and also the grant permissions that we did as well. The transfer permissions has this rollback option selected. So what I can do is actually go through and select that job, because that could have been a temporary thing. Demo user 10 could have been on maternity or paternity leave or something like that. So somebody needed permission so they could actually do their job while they're away. Now they're back, we can select that and we can roll it back, and that will put that job back to how it was. So as we scroll down here, we can see all those permissions actually being taken away from demo user 4 and being given to demo user 10 again. So demo user 10 can now consider or continue what they were doing. So again, if we were to filter on demo user 10, we can see that full control has been re-granted to that account. Okay, so there's also a few reports that you can run at site collection level as well, and these include, sorry, it looks like I may have something else selected that I wasn't aware of. Let me just refresh the page here. So I need to have only a site collection selected for this. So as I select a site collection, you'll notice on the reports here that we've got some dead accounts, some unlicensed users, and also external user reports as well. Dead accounts is basically including anybody that is no longer inside the Active Directory, or they've been disabled inside the Active Directory. So we can pull up that dead account report and generate it, and it will show me those users. So there may be accounts that have moved on, but their permissions were never removed from SharePoint. Now we've got that opportunity to go through and remove their permissions from SharePoint. So you can do that just simply by selecting it and removing the dead account. There's also unlicensed users reports, which will show you anybody that doesn't have a SharePoint license anymore, but still has permissions, or external users as well that we can get at. Okay, so that's the type of thing that we can do here in SharePoint. And I just want to point out as well, if I was to open this site as a teamified site, so we'll open it up in Teams. And what we can do is access DeliverPoint from within Teams as well. You're not going to see anything new that you've not just seen inside of SharePoint, but what we do have is the context of being inside of Teams, which when we're trying to manage teams makes sense. So we can go through and select our teams, we can expand our teams and select different objects inside of Teams. And once we've selected those, they can also use exactly the same report. So we've got things like the discover permissions and things like that that we can execute across multiple teams. Again, if somebody leaves, we can take them out of multiple teams and everything as well. Okay, so that's kind of a quick tour of DeliverPoint and how we can help in all of those scenarios. So the key features that you saw was, being able to discover permissions, including the advanced version of that, having a look at all the different sharing links, regardless as to where they are, looking at user-centric reporting and unique object reporting as well, so we can just see the objects with broken permission inheritance. And we've also got the ability to manage, that's the copy, transfer, delete, revoke permissions, and also the OneDrive reports as well. And you can use that in SharePoint or in Teams. So new features, let's have a look at those. One of them I'm particularly excited about is the report templates, because no matter how easy we've just made that look to manage permissions, we do sometimes have to keep on rerunning the same report and setting up lots of different options. So when we are back in DeliverPoint and perhaps we've drilled into the hub sites view, so when I go into my hub site, the Lightning Tool software, I've actually just got 4 associated sites to my hub. Now, forget how many you can have. I think you can have 250. Microsoft may have increased it, but that's a lot of things to select on this tree view here. So what I can do is go through and select all the SharePoint sites that I want to report on, and I can go through and run my discover permissions, or even my discover permissions advanced. And once I've got those selected, I can include my options as to what I want to see. And I could pre-filter it if I wanted to as well. So that's going to go through and generate that report for me. And again, we're seeing all of those options that we want to see. But what I can do now is simply save that report as a template. And I can give it a nice little name. So Sales Hub Permission Report, including unique objects. So we know exactly what that is, and I can keep that as just my report. I can also share it, so anybody else that has full control to that site can use my report. So that report has been saved as a template. So whenever I want to run it now, I don't need to select all of these sites. I can just go to the reports menu, go to the report templates, and here right at the very top is my Sales Hub Permission Report, including unique objects. So I can select that and generate it, and it will give me back that same report that I had configured. So we've got all of the options that we want to see. So this makes it really simple to maybe run on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, something along those lines. You can get exactly the report that you want by just going to that report templates option. And we can select the report and have a look at what options were configured as well. So if you forget or you didn't give it a descriptive name, you can come in and see what sites are included, what options were ticked, when you produce that report. And it's not just for the Discover permissions. You can use that against all the reports in DeliverPoint. So really a useful feature. So that's report templates, brand new. We've also got some PowerShell commandlets. And so this is not something that perhaps users need to care about too much, but if you're configuring DeliverPoint, we have had some feedback that some options may want to be hidden from certain types of users and things like that. And one of those options is support rollback. So when we're in DeliverPoint and we're perhaps about to do a copy permissions or something like that, one of the options that we've got here is support rollback. So it would be easy to go through and accidentally delete a whole bunch of permissions from somebody and then not be able to undo that operation. So what you can do now with the PowerShell commandlet is actually have this checked by default. So we can go through and enable that just simply by running that PowerShell command. So you can basically refine your options that you want to be default options when you're performing operations like that. We can also now hide the actions menu from non-site collection administrators. So what you've seen is actually security trimmed. Again, if you are not somebody that is a site owner, when you go into a document library, you're not going to see any DeliverPoint options. So notice DeliverPoint doesn't show up here. It's not showing up on the command bar. The shortcut menus aren't displayed, and that's because I don't have full control. But if I have full control to the site or full control to a folder or a document, then I can use DeliverPoint on that site or on that folder or document. And you may not want that to be the case. So what you can do is using, again, a PowerShell command, you can go through and remove the actions menu. So it will be removed from anybody that is not a site collection administrator. So that stops them from being able to copy, transfer, delete permissions, etc. You're tying that down to just site collection admins. But just bear in mind that as a site owner, or somebody has full control to a folder or a document, that doesn't actually stop you from going into the out of the box permissions options to grant those permissions or anything. You could still do that as you have full control. So it's just you're limiting DeliverPoint based on that option. There's also the ability to set your default to export to Excel or export to CSV. So it was always CSV before. Now you can actually include Excel as part of your report. We weren't including disabled users in the data count reports. We are now. And the other new features we've got to talk about are DeliverPoint for Enterprise. So DeliverPoint for Enterprise is actually a more complex build of DeliverPoint. And it's something that requires quite a bit of setup, which we can guide you through, because it's no longer just the SPFX package that gets deployed to the app catalog and you're done, like the standard DeliverPoint. This actually involves an Azure SQL database and some Azure functions to be deployed or hosted. Doesn't have to be Azure, but hosted somewhere. Once you've done that, you can actually run scheduled reports and use some of these other enterprise features. So this is something we can do already in the on-premises version of SharePoint, but you can't do easily using the SharePoint framework, which is why it involves Azure. So in on-prem, we had timer jobs, for instance, so we could schedule reports. Now we're having to use Azure functions, and that would require a little bit more setup. So what this looks like, I'm just going to bring up another tenant here, so I can show you. So in this DeliverPoint version that we're looking at here, what we can do is come into DeliverPoint, and you'll notice I've got this schedule button at the top. Now, one of the reasons for doing this, if I was to just use the standard discover permissions against a site, I can go through and hit discover permissions, and you'll see that it churns away and it brings back a permission report. Okay, there's not much in here to bring back, but it does have to produce a real-time report of everybody that is permissioned inside your site. So if you're running this on a very large scope with maybe tens of thousands of users, you've got hundreds of thousands of documents or something, you don't want to sit there for 5 minutes whilst it's producing a real-time report. So what we can do is tell DeliverPoint to schedule a report for me. So we can simply, and in fact, in order to be able to do this, I need to grab the link to this document library here. It could be any document library that you want to create your report in, but I'm going to choose that one. So when I go through and select my site here, I can discover permissions, but notice I don't get the discover permissions report generated in front of my eyes. I'm basically going to tell it that I want you to go and do it and drop it into this document library here for me. And I can have that triggered now, which, I mean, it may take 5 or 10 minutes to run, or we can have it hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. So if I wanted this as a monthly report, I can choose monthly. I can choose the day of the month and the start time, whether I want it just generated once or every month, and hit schedule. And once I've done that, that report will be scheduled for me. I promise. Not sure what's going on there. Oh, there we go. So it's finished scheduling that Discover Permissions report. So of course I don't have that report in front of me. It's got to actually do it, and it's going to do it when I told it to do it. So 1st of October, I'm going to have that report. So I can come in here and click onto scheduled reports and see the reports that I've ran before. And you can see we've got an ID for each report. We've got the type of report. So in this case, it was Discover Permissions. The one that I've just created, I can see is scheduled. It's not actually completed yet, but it's going to run on day 1 of the month at midnight. However, previously to that, I ran one at 9:34, and you can see that that is ready. And I can access it by clicking onto the CSV file. So that will actually open up that report for me. And that has opened up on my other window. Just bear with me, let's bring that in. So it's a CSV file. We can, of course, go through and make our columns fit. You can see why you may want to make this an Excel file instead of a CSV using the Powershell command. But what I'm going to do is just go through and format that as a table in Lightning Tools Blue. There we go. And what we can do now is start to filter on all of those important things. And bear in mind, this could be a huge report. But if we wanted to bring back everything that has unique permissions, for example, there it is. We've got everything with unique permissions in the Excel document. If we want to report on a particular person, we can do that, or report on a particular permission level, and so on. We can just basically go through and chop and change this Excel document however we please, and we've got all of that information available to us as to who's got access to all of our content. Okay, so that's something that you can do. Like I said, it does require a bit of setup, and just like standard DeliverPoint, nothing still is outside of your control. This isn't being stored on our servers. It's not being processed on our servers or anything like that. This is all within inside your tenant. So if you choose to use Azure, it will be your Azure database. It will be your Azure functions, and the documents here. The reason why I copied that document library was so that we had somewhere for these Excel documents to be stored. So they are all stored inside of SharePoint, and of course you may want to secure that document library. So yeah, in here we've got all the other reports that have taken place, and we can go through and access those directly. So if we want to go back and look at some historic reports, this one's actually got a little bit more in it. So there we go, we can see a mixture of different read permissions and edit permissions and things like that through here. Okay, so they are the main new features. We've also got in the enterprise version the ability to set up DeliverPoint operators as well, which is something we had in the on-prem version. This overcomes the challenge of having to give users full control to everything that you want them to be able to report and manage. Instead of doing that, you can actually have somebody that may be a help desk operator, give them the ability to use DeliverPoint to report permissions. So even if that help desk operator does not have full control to a site, they will still be able to use DeliverPoint to be able to see who's got access to it or grant somebody access to it. All right, so they were the new features in 3.4. And from this point, if you are interested in looking further into DeliverPoint, you could download a 30-day trial of DeliverPoint if you don't already own it. Also, we can arrange a private demonstration because everything I've covered is kind of generic. You may have specific requirements, so we could go through that in a private demo. There's also the DeliverPoint roadmap on our website, so you can see what's coming as well. And to be honest, we spend the latter part of every year planning our next year's roadmap. So we are, of course, getting into Q4 very soon. So if there are any features, any needs, any wants that you might have as an organization with regards to permissions management, or if you're familiar with our other products and have needs and wants for those, please reach out to us, because you may be able to help us build our roadmap as well for next year and see features that you would like in a permissions management tool. So yeah, you can go and check out the DeliverPoint product on our website by going to ltools.co/DeliverPoint. And also you'll see in here, we've got some upcoming webinars as well for some of our other products. So next month is all going to be about Social Squared, which is our discussion board tool that works for SharePoint and Teams. So you can build a sort of structured discussion board inside of SharePoint and Teams. So we're going to be hosting that on the 28th of October. There's also the Lightning Connector content aggregation tool. We'll be releasing that in November, and a release of Lightning Forms in December this year. So there's a few webinars that are already up on our website. You can go and schedule those if that's something that you would like to go ahead and join. And right now, I'm going to open up for any questions that you may have. It looks like there's a few already in the chat window here, so I'm just going to bring that up and the Q&A panel as well. And if you also think of a question afterwards or need to jump off the call, feel free to drop us a line as well on either sales@lightningtools.com if it's a sort of customer related question, or if you've got a technical question, you can reach out to our support team, support@lightningtools.com, or just go onto our website and chat is another way. Okay, so great. I'm going to go through some of these questions that I've got. So one of them is, what is the difference between a delete permissions and a revoke permissions? So yeah, the delete permissions is something that you could run as though that user was going to be leaving your department, leaving your organization, whatever it is against that scope. They don't need any permissions anymore. So you can go through and run that delete permissions against that account, and whether they had read or edit or full control, whatever they had, that would be removed. With revoke permissions, you're able to take away a permission level. So if you spot somebody has full control and they shouldn't, but in addition to that, they also have their edit or read, you could revoke the full control and everything else will be unaffected. So for the rollback, can the rollback be done after you have finished the report? Yes, it can. Yeah, so you can roll back immediately, which once you've performed that option. So you probably saw that button. I don't think I called that out, but yeah, that's kind of useful for the whoops moment. So if I deleted the wrong person's permissions or something like that. But yeah, you can also go to the jobs page. I think you probably saw me do that after you asked your question there. So you can go to the jobs page, you can select the job that you want to roll back, and you can roll it back. Can you run a dead account report for all site collections as a tenant administrator? Great question. So yeah, I believe you have to be a site collection administrator. So you would literally have to be a site collection admin and run the dead account report and remove those dead accounts as a site collection administrator. Okay, so another question here is, since there is no farm level access available in SharePoint Online, what type of permissions will I need to be able to see permissions on each site or hub? I recall seeing information on the interwebs that stated you need to have site owner privileges on each individual site to be able to access it. No, not true. So you can actually go into DeliverPoint as a tenant administrator and report against any sites. So you'll have full control implicitly. Basically, the way that DeliverPoint works is, if you were able to report and manage permissions using SharePoint natively, you will be able to do the same with DeliverPoint as well. tenant admins will actually absolutely be able to run discover permissions and things like that. The only thing that they wouldn't be able to do, is based on the previous question, is that remove dead account. So at the moment, they do need to be a site collection admin in order to be able to do that one. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question there. I will just point out as well, so when you say farm level access as well, so in SharePoint on-prem, yeah, you can run these things as farm level access as well. So in SharePoint Online as a tenant level, you can produce these things as tenant level, but if you are going to be doing a lot of that, you may want to consider the enterprise version, because it could be quite demanding trying to run operations against the entire tenant. So the way that DeliverPoint is kind of designed is, you can run these things against single or multiple sites and single and multiple site collections, but don't go crazy. It's something that you can use intuitively. Okay, so another question is, when is the cloud Microsoft 365 version of report scheduling being targeted for? So when is that available? So it's available now. It's not something that you're just going to be able to download and install. It will require some help from us. So if you can reach out to us, if that's of interest to you, then you can reach out on sales@lightningtools.com. What we can do is give you access to our tenant, so you can test out those features. And if it's something that you want to use, you want to test yourself, then absolutely we can go through and help you configure that, because like I say, there is a bit of configuration to go. It's just really nice with the DeliverPoint SPFX version to drag and drop it in the app catalog, and like I say, you're done. With the enterprise features, there's a bit more work involved in doing that. Okay, so yeah, your follow-on question of you looking to automate quarterly audit reports for SharePoint Online, absolutely, that's the intention here. So is there a way to copy and/or sync SharePoint groups with users within the groups between site collections? The idea is that multiple site collections have the same groups with the same sets of users within each. Yes, that's actually something I forgot to show you. So let me just jump back into DeliverPoint briefly. Okay, and yeah, when you're, sorry, I'm in the right tenant, wrong user. There we go. So yeah, another thing that you can do in that case where you want the groups and the permissions to look the same across multiple objects, maybe like sibling sites or document libraries and so on as well, you can go through and select maybe a site like this one, and from the actions menu against permissions management, I can say I want to copy the site permissions. So I want to copy the site permissions from this site and maybe give the same people, the same groups, permissions to another site. And that site could even live in a different site collection, which of course most of them do now. So in here, we can see what our scope is. The scope is the Lightning Tools sales site that I selected. I can then choose a target site, which could be somewhere else. I'm going to use this Alpine Ski House site collection as an example, and I'll just choose that team site there. So that's what I want to clone the permissions to. Now, of course, that sales site could have custom permission levels. So in that case, I can say create any missing roles, basically any missing permission levels. I can create any missing SharePoint groups. I can overwrite the target permissions if I want to, or if I don't select that, then any existing permissions will remain inside my target site. I can also modify the membership of any existing SharePoint groups as well. So hit run on that, and that will go through and clone this site against the other site. So literally everything is mirrored across those two sites. And not only can you do it at site level, but you could also do it at list or library level as well. So I can choose a library here, and notice that option becomes copy list permissions. If I was to run that unique objects report and include items, you can also run it from here as well. So if I saw demo user 3 and demo user 6 commission claims, these both have unique permissions, so I could select this one if that was deemed right, and I could say I want to go through and copy the item permissions from demo user 3 commission claims to demo user 6 commission claims, and both of those permission levels will be synced and copied across. Okay, so hopefully that helps. So there's a couple of additional questions. So the current on-prem version I am using doesn't work. It only copies the group, not the users within it. Okay, that's unusual. It should work absolutely fine. Sounds like we may need to reach out to you on technical support. So we'll have logged your question. So we'll reach out to you and make sure that that is absolutely working for you. There is sometimes usually a reason for some of these things to occur. One of the things that could occur in that scenario, just to give you a heads up, is that even as somebody that is a site owner, you may not actually have the rights to be able to change the group membership, depending on who created that group. So there could be things like that. And also bear in mind that it won't actually copy the users into Active Directory security groups. That's deliberate because Active Directory security groups may be required for other systems, not just SharePoint. And I think I've got my last question here. So will tenant administrators in the future be able to update, remove accounts from site collections? Yeah, so they can update and remove accounts from site collections. It's just that dead account report. So I think that is something that we're looking to modify. But yeah, we'll keep you informed on that one. Okay, I think that is all the questions. So I'm just going to thank everybody for attending the webinar and hopefully see you again on a future webinar or on a private demonstration. But for now, thank you very much for attending and hopefully see you soon. Thanks.